You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. You know, for the most part, I think that most adults, the majority of adults, like social media. They like Facebook, they like getting online, they like posting selfies, they like posting pictures. We kind of figure that out. But what do kids for the ages of 5 to 11 years old really think about social media? And, you know, I went in to find out about that. I went in to figure out what exactly kids between the ages of 5 and 11, what do they think, honestly, about social media? And it's funny because I got an earful. I wasn't planning on it. I wasn't thinking that I was going to get told a lot. I was thinking, actually, if anything, kids were going to be telling me how much they like Facebook. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong. It's interesting how the generations change. You know, for me, for example, I'm on Facebook a lot of times because of what I do as a career, as awakening, as publicizing and PR, as well as just conversing with friends and people I've never met that are across the world on the other side of the globe. I think that's really interesting. Just the other day, actually, my father's sister reached out to me, and we hadn't talked in over 20 years. And to me, that's pretty cool. That's something that, you know, Facebook does. But recently, I've gone to several schools, several elementary schools, and asked the kids what they thought about social media, specifically Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I most definitely got an earful. I couldn't believe it. In each class, I was given 30 minutes to talk. And so I decided the best thing to do would be to ask the kids, you know, about their childhood, about their home life, because, you know, Perspectives is the name of my show. And everybody has a different perspective based upon things in their life. And the first thing that I decided would really allow certain perspectives is if the child was an only child, if the child was the youngest child, the oldest, or the middle. And that's a big deal because I know that a lot of people listening tonight go, you know what? I never really thought about that. I never really thought about what a different perspective it would be to be the middle child versus the eldest versus the only, especially when we go back to elementary school. And so I asked each student where they were in the family. And in almost every class, I averaged out, I guess there were about 20 kids in each class. 20 kids. And in each class, I usually had 2 only children. And the rest were either the youngest, the oldest, or the middle. And some were the real youngest. And it was funny because one of the teachers, well, actually 2 different teachers in 2 different classrooms made a comment about how some of these kids were surprises. Kind of just showed up, being that their brothers and sisters were either graduating high school or already in college. And so I thought it was really interesting. I asked them what they thought about social media because I know that these kids probably see mom and dad on it all the time on their smartphones. And I wonder what was going on. And so I thought it would be interesting to get their perspective on social media and what that means for all of us. So let's begin our discussion tonight on what children ages 5 to 11 think about Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. First off is they think it's a big waste of time. They think it's a waste of time. They can't even understand how much time their parents spend on it. One child I spoke to said that her mom stays in bed in the morning and just literally goes through Facebook updates and Twitter feeds. Some of the other kids said that mom's always taking selfies, dad's always on instant messenger, and they feel like it's a big waste of time. They don't understand what the big deal is. And so we started talking about Facebook in particular, and I asked him, I said, you know, what is it about Facebook that you feel is such a waste of time? And they were really to the point. They said, I don't even know what's real. Is any of this real? I mean, we see mom taking pictures of herself and writing up descriptions of it, but it's just like in our own backyard. She wasn't at some VIP party. Interesting. And overall, all the children, about 99.9%, and there might have been one out of every class I went to, said that it was a waste of time. They couldn't believe that adults spent so much time on their cell phone looking at Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter feeds. They couldn't believe how many selfies they watched their parents take over and over and over again to get the best selfie possible. They could not believe the stalking that mom was doing on her friend's Facebook page and making comments about how she wasn't invited to a party or how dare them go to dinner without her. It was a very interesting perspective because I remember when I was young at that age in elementary school, and let's all go back to that right now. Let's all think about how it was back when we were in elementary school. So in elementary school, we didn't have any cell phones, for me at least. We didn't have cell phones. I think, the cell phones were coming around, but at that time, my dad did have a car phone. He had a car phone. And I remember how resentful I was of said car phone. Because we would be driving down the street, and my dad would be driving me somewhere. We would be going somewhere maybe to get a bite to eat, or he was picking me up from school, which was very rare because he was usually out of town a lot because of his work. So that was a big deal, too, is that I never got to spend a lot of time with Dad. And so I always wanted to make the time that we spent be, good, be rememberable, be fun. And it would never fail. We'd be driving down the street, and we hadn't even been in the car that long. And we would be talking about where we were going to go, if we were going to go by Sonic or if it was going to be an Arby's night. Remember those days when it was an Arby's night? Like once a week you had Arby's? Oh my gosh, things have changed. Anyway, we'd be thinking about that, or we'd be driving somewhere, maybe out to like some of the outskirts cities, going to something, a book fair or whatever. And I would be like wanting to tell my dad about all the great stuff that happened at school that week and everything, and ask him how his week was because he was never in town. And I'm telling you, it never failed. I would be in the car for 5 minutes, ready to tell my dad all about what happened that week. And he would be blaring his Barbra Streisand tape. Barbra Streisand. Yes, Barbra Streisand. Yes, I did not mince words. I said Barbra Streisand. It was either that or, oh my gosh, it was either that or Neil Diamond. Neil Diamond was my dad's second favorite. So we'd be driving down the street, listening to Barbra Streisand or Neil Diamond. And, I'd be kind of talking over it because he would crank it up a little bit. Because I started wondering, does Dad really want to hear me talk? But, us kids, we don't really care. We don't really care about that. The phone rings. My dad goes, Ashley, turns down the radio, the stereo. Ashley looks at me and goes, shh, hold on a second, I have a phone call. So he'd reach into that center console and pull up the phone. And, the phone's attached to that little curly wire. Little curly connection there. Hey, he'd be like, it's John. John Burgess here. And, no. They'd be talking. 5 minutes would go by. I'd be like, okay, that's okay. 7 minutes would go by. Because, I'm a kid. I'm counting it. 10 minutes go by. 15 minutes go by. And by the time he's about to get off the phone, we're already where we're supposed to be at. And we're like in the parking lot waiting. And there's no music. I can't say anything. I can't do anything. I'm stuck in this car with nothing to do. And finally, I would be looking at my dad, just like thinking in my mind, if you can read my mind, you'll get off that phone right now. And finally, he'd be like, okay, hey, it was great talking to you, John or Mark or whoever it was. I'll get back with you when I get back into the office later on today. I'll take care of that. He'd get off the phone. Okay, let's go. And I had no time to talk to him. And I resented that. I resented that because it was the time that got in the way of me and my dad spending time together. And I resented it. And talking to these kids, they basically feel like it's a waste of time because they resent it as well. Stay tuned. When we return, we'll be talking more about how kids age 5 to 11 actually really feel about social media and how much they like or dislike their parents on Facebook. Stay tuned, because Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Tonight we're talking about social media, but more than just social media. We're talking about what your kids, ages 5 to 11 years old, think about social media, and think about your interaction on social media. Because I think it's interesting the way that us adults deal with social media. It takes up some of our time. Some of you more than others. I have some friends that literally say that they average between 3 to 6 hours a day. So they wake up in the morning and they get a good hour and a half. Some people actually wake up early than they need to get on social media. During the day, here and there, at work, they're on there updating their what they're doing for the day, taking a picture, a selfie at work, talking about how work sucks, that sort of thing, trolling, putting up pictures from the weekend on Instagram, making a comment on Twitter. They get home that evening, check it during dinner a little bit here and there, and in bed before they go to bed. It's a cycle. And I've been in that position before, too, where I've spent way too much time on social media, where you sit there and you start forgetting that there's an outside world. So, I remember when I was a kid, we didn't have any cell phones at the time, but we did have car phones. And in the last segment, I was talking about how my dad was never really home. And I love my dad, but he was a salesman, and he traveled all the time. And so anytime I saw my dad was kind of a big deal because we really never got to see each other. And my dad had a car phone, and it was one of those car phones that was in the center console, and it was connected to a wire. It wasn't wireless. And I swear, almost every single time we were in the car phone would ring. And I just couldn't stand it, honestly, because I wanted to spend time with my dad. And I just felt like every single time I was in that car, the phone would go off. And it would. And it wasn't like, hey, let me call you back. I got to go. It was like, hey, they start talking and talking and talking, and they don't stop. No music. I got nothing to entertain myself except for looking straight ahead at the road. And I remember Barbra Streisand and Neil Diamond got on my nerves, but not as much as that phone did. And it's funny, now that I look at my life, my parents wondered why I had an addiction to a cell phone at such an early age. I really wonder why now. Could not have nothing to do with my dad and that phone. And so I recently went to a bunch of career days and open houses at various schools, and I was able to speak to students between the ages of 5 and 11. And I got a lot of time in each one of these classrooms, and each classroom averaged between 15 and 20 students. And so we began the conversations, each one about perspectives, because that's the name of the show, right? What does perspective mean? And I explained it by, explaining it to them about being the only child or the middle child or the youngest child or the oldest child and what perspective they had on that. And eventually we went through that and we talked about it, and it really was eye-opening. But even more eye-opening was when I asked them about social media. I said, how many people in the classroom, how many of you are on social media? And I realize that there's an age requirement on Facebook, but really, come on, is that really real? No. I mean, you can definitely go around it, okay? Kids go around it all the time. But let's just say, yes, there is an age requirement, but for the most part, kids go around it. And have you seen how many kids out there have computers and iPads and smartphones now. And that was kind of one of the reasons why I asked, is because I asked everybody to raise their hand that had a cell phone. And in almost every class, every single child raised their hand. And I asked them, where was the phone? Most of the kids' phones were at home, or they were in their locker, or they couldn't remember. And I said, well, out of all you with the phones, how many of you are on social media? How many of you are on Facebook? And I saw the kids' faces just start to frown. And I saw kids, and this one kid looked at me, he's like, oh, I'm so tired of Facebook. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, my mom is always on Facebook. The only time that she actually talks to me is to ask me how to do something on Facebook. Otherwise, I'm in the car and she's driving, messing with Facebook. She's driving on the phone, messing with Facebook. And he goes, I'm looking around. I'm like, Mom, watch out. Don't hit something. Don't hit anybody. And she's over there on Facebook. And so most of the kids told me that, first off, they feel that social media is a big, big waste of time. They can't believe that people our age are on it all the time. They're like, it's not even real. Like, they spend more time, they're like, the parents spend more time on instant messaging and Facebook than anything. And the second thing they always say is that mom's always on it, dad's always on it. They're always monopolized by this. I asked them about, family vacations or events. And they said it always happens that mom or dad is on social media, on their smartphone, buried in their smartphone, not even paying attention. Not even paying attention. One kid goes, I could have drowned. Parents weren't even paying attention. Think about this. Think about it right now, how it must feel to be a child that just wants to talk to mom and dad, or mom or dad, or whoever's raising them. And the person that's raising them has their head buried in their smartphone trying to figure out the best selfie they can post, or the best party pic, or to try to figure out what their friends are up to, or trying to stalk their friends. That's interesting. I mean, that's very interesting if you think about it, because I remember as a child how upset I was about that car phone. And it's funny because we don't really think about these things when we get older, because we just assume that it doesn't really matter, that it's no big deal, no harm, no foul. But I'm starting to realize that maybe this is going to cause a problem for us, because I remember how I was when I got out of school and got my first cell phone. I was an addict. I learned it from my dad. These kids are either going to hate social media with a passion to the point that social media will be out like Tab Cola, or they are going to be so solidly addicted that there's no way around it. And you have to think about that, because I do it. I don't have children right now, and I'm thinking about having children. Me and my husband are talking about it. But, I don't have children right now, and I know that sometimes my husband looks at me when we're at dinner and goes, honey, can you put the cell phone down? I mean, the Facebook will wait. And I'll be like, yeah, and I find myself becoming addicted to it. And so I've had to put a real definition and defining distance between me and that phone sometimes, because it can really take you out of the now. It does. It takes you out of the present moment. It takes you out of being here. And it puts you in that phone. It puts you there. You're no longer in the moment. You're on the sidelines. You're looking at how other people are living their life. You're looking at somebody else's diamond ring that they got for their 12th anniversary, where you see comments as, oh, amazing. Oh, you're so lucky. Oh, congratulations on that 12 years. And then you always got that one person on there going, wish I was rich. Think about it. I mean, to me, it's just such a hodgepodge. I mean, I use social media more as like a behavioral science. You can learn a lot about somebody by the way that they post comments. You can learn a lot about people's rhythms and their personas, and you can learn a lot about their addictions based on what time they post, what they post, how they post, and better yet, what they erase. I think it's funny because some people post at random times, and they post, and it's funny because it's just so random. And they'll post some rude stuff, and they'll post at 3 or 4 in the morning, and you'll see it, and then the next day, it's gone. It's gone. By the time you check it, it's gone. And these kids, when I was asking them about that, that was one of their arguments. One of their concerns was that they didn't feel as though social media is really real at all. Because they've even had their family post stuff like their mom or dad about how they were at some party or some event. And the kids talked about how they were there and it wasn't that big of an event. It was nothing big. Or having to take a picture of mom with the cell phone over and over and over again to get the right pic. I mean, think about what these kids are growing up in. Think about it. It's like way worse than the car phone, because at least the car phone was regulated to the car. Think about it. What if social media was regulated to one spot? What if that cell phone, that cell device only worked in one spot, and other than that, you could not update your social media? But think about it. You can do that anywhere, at any time, from anything. And that's one of the biggest complaints, is that mom and dad are always on it. They're not paying attention to the kids. They're not even in life anymore. They're on the sidelines on digital media talking to other digital people that aren't even there. One kid talked about how they had a birthday party for him, and he loved it, except for at one point in time when he was about to blow out the candles, both parents were on social media with their head down, looking at the phone. Like, they don't even have pictures of that. They were too busy doing something. That's crazy. Think about what our kids are growing up to. When we return, we'll be talking about why kids also are begrudging of social media. Their big argument, their big reason for why they just don't like it. Stay tuned, because Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Tonight, we're talking about social media. But more than just what we think about social media, better yet, what do children 5 to 11 years old think about social media? Well, you know what? They don't like it. They don't like it at all. You know, the first reason they don't like it is because they believe that it's a big waste of time. They don't even think it's real. Mom and dad are over there updating their social media all the time, trying to make themselves look so good. Think about that. What about also mom and dad are always on it? They're never giving attention to their kids anymore because they're always on social media. Kids hate it. I remember how much I hated that my dad's phone, my dad's car phone. Seriously, think about it. Think about how much it has got to just irritate the living bejesus out of these kids. Parents are driving around in the car, at the light, at the stop. We're lucky if it's at a stoplight, on social media. You know, they're at the swim meets, they're at the games. What? Updating their Facebook. You know, the kids have a birthday, the kids blowing out the candles, parents are not paying attention, they're instant messaging. Think about this. It has changed. And we as adults don't think about that. We don't think about it at all. Like, I'm thinking about how my husband sits there and makes comments sometimes when we're at dinner, and he goes, "Hey, can you put the phone down, really?" And I'm like, sorry. And I'll put it down. And I've actually made a bigger commitment now to stop bringing the cell phone with me. I just think that a lot of times at dinner, the last thing you want to do is continue to bring the cell phone with you and kind of be lulled into wanting to look at what's going on. Like you're missing something. The funny thing is, you know what? You're only missing something when you get on there. And these kids are like, man, they get upset by it because social media gets way more attention than they do. And that's interesting because, think about it. It's just something, it says something about us as a civilization, as a community. And, I think we can look at it more as maybe just the United States, but I think all over the world. I mean, Perspectives has, I would say, over 40,000 followers alone that aren't in the United States. A lot of people are on social media. A lot of people are on Facebook. And think about the kids all over the world growing up right now with mom and dad stuck on their smartphone devices, stuck on their home computer devices, on instant messaging and on Facebook. I had a friend of mine the other day tell me he's Cambodian, and his wife is Vietnamese, and the other day he walked in on her and she was instant messaging, and he goes, and yep, it was in Vietnamese to some Vietnamese guy. And he doesn't know Vietnamese, he knows Cambodian, so he can't read it. And he's like, I have no idea what's going on. And think about it, you got all that stuff going on too. Think about the adults that are married that are cheating and using Facebook messaging or flirting. Think about that, the flirting. The kids aren't stupid. I mean, if you're hiding comments and stuff from dad or vice versa, something's up. I mean, we see that all the time. I'll see people on those Facebook and everything all the time, and they got the kids, and you can see the kids' heads just like, man, jeez. That's a problem. Some of these kids that I talk to in these classrooms, one of the things that really upset them was that they say that they feel like they're being used. Like one kid said that his mom went to go get the new iPhone 6. And he had to wait with her at the phone company, at the T-Mobile or AT&T or Verizon or Sprint, whatever it was. And as he's waiting there, he's waiting and the people were showing her the phone and all. And so they turn it on and they get it all working. And then he goes, we get out to the car. And he goes, thank God you turned the AC on. And she looked at him. She goes, show me how to get on Facebook. And he's like, well, we're not even home yet. I mean, we want to charge up the phone completely before you start using it. And this kid's like 7 years old. I was like, yeah. But show me how to get on here, how to add the icon. So they added the icon because she didn't take her old phone. It was just a new phone. And she puts in all that, gets passcode in, gets in there. And she takes a picture of herself in the car saying, got a new phone. And she looked at her son. She's like, so just real quick, how do I take the picture? And then how do I load it on there just real quick? And he's like, the only time she asks me a question is when she needs advice on how to load up a video or how to load a picture to Facebook or Instagram or Vine. He goes, my mom's doing Vine now. I don't even want to know what his mom's doing on Vine, but apparently she's on Vine. And these kids have got to just be thoroughly, thoroughly irritated. Mom and dad are supposed to be mom and dad, except for mom and dad are always on the phone. They're either always on the phone or they're always on social media or they're always texting. That has got to be pretty upsetting for a kid. I mean, think about it. How many of you dealt with the phone scenario like I did with my dad? How many of you had parents that were always into their own thing and seemed to ignore you? Seemed to have their own thing going on, and every time you had a comment or a question, they just seemed to not even answer or bother or care. And I know a lot of us come from families where we didn't feel that loved. We didn't feel that cared for. We didn't know if anybody cared what we did or what we didn't do. I remember the first time I was riding my bike with no training wheels, and I took my hands off the bars, and I put them out, and I put them over my head as I was going down the street, and I go, look, Mom, Dad, no hands. Both of them were turned around. My mom or my dad was talking to one of the neighbors, and my dad or my mom was pulling up a weed that she'd found over there by the mailbox. Neither one of them saw it. When I tried to do it again, yeah, I fell. Yeah. So think about what these kids are dealing with nowadays. Instead of mom or dad talking to the neighbor, mom or dad's over there on instant messaging God knows who. Talking about God knows what. The other parent's over there putting a selfie up there about the new mailbox they just put up in the lawn or the party they're going to have. It's hard enough to compete with real people, much less a device that you carry in your hand 24/7. I mean, I can only dream about being a child right now and how difficult that would be with mom or dad on social media all the time. And some of these kids really, really doubly hate it because their brothers and sisters are way older than them. They're way older than them, and because they're way older than them, they're on social media too. And they're like, everybody's on social media. They're like, we don't ever have any time with our family. Some of the other kids' concerns were that when they went on a family trip, they were the only one not on their smartphone. They were the only one not on the phone because they all have phones, but they all have phones for emergencies to call mom and dad, to text mom and dad. And they get bored. And it's got to be a boring childhood when your parents are literally stuck on social media. I mean, what do you do? I mean, it's hard to fight against something that's not really there, but yet it's so addictive. We've become so addicted to instant gratification. We become so addicted to knowing what other people are doing or to seeing other people's lives, to being voyeurs. But the funny thing about social media is it any of it real? Social media is, you can look the absolute best you want or the absolute worst you want. You stage it yourself. It's a rigged process. Yes, it's staged. It's rigged. You heard it right here on Perspectives. We give you more answers, less questions. More answers, less questions. It's rigged. You're always going to be lesser. If you are comparing yourself to people on social media, you're never going to be as good as them because their lives look way better than yours because they have the faster cars. They have the better stuff. The better stuff. They do. They have the way better stuff because they look better than you. I mean, I've had other people compare themselves to people on social media, and it's a non-win. You never win. It's a lose-lose proposition, and you're competing against people that don't even know that you're competing against them. And children know because they always feel a little lesser than. Think about how kids feel when mom and dad are more interested in their phone than with their kids. I mean, I thought one of the biggest deals about having children is to spend some time with them. But it seems like the majority of adults nowadays don't spend that much time with their kids. I mean, yeah, they're standing there physically, but mentally and emotionally they're not there. They're not even listening. They're not even paying attention to their children. They got social media stuff to attend to. Let them go. Back off. Seriously, this is becoming an epidemic. And these kids are violently against social media because of this. They hate it. It's like how I hated the phone. That's the thing that scares me is, are these kids going to become majorly addicted to social media? Or will there be an outcry and eventually social media would be no more? Stay tuned. We're returning to me talking more about what kids think about social media as well as what you can do as a parent right now to have a better life with your kids and to also loosen up the addiction to social media. Stay tuned because Perspectives will be back in. We'll be back in this time in 2 shakes.
You could be my luck.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Safe and sound.
Welcome back live to Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Tonight we've been talking about social media. But more than social media, more than Facebook, more than Twitter, more than Instagram, we're talking about what our kids think about social media. Children between the ages of 5 and 11, actually. That's the demographic we're going with. Recently, I have gone to several career days and several open houses for elementary school students. And I spoke to kids that were in kindergarten all the way up to 5th grade. And I learned a lot. I tell you. I learned a lot about what kids really think about social media. What they think about it, how they feel about it, all that good stuff. And I've been reporting to you and telling you this all night. So let's talk a little bit more, because I want to share with you not only what they think, but what you can begin to do to loosen up the addiction to social media and get back in life with their kiddo. Because like what I was talking about in the beginning of the show was when I would ride with my dad in the car, and inevitably that car phone would ring. And he would answer it. And remember how expensive car phone conversations were? Woo! Things like $99, $95, $1 a minute back then. And for the most part, most people would get off the phone, but not my dad. There would always be somebody that would call that needed something immediately, and they would talk about it and all that good stuff. And I remember my dad would be in the car, and we would just I would have to be completely quiet. There was no more talking, no more sharing, because my dad was really out of town most of the time, so I look forward to some of those conversations in the car, but that was gone. I couldn't even listen to Neil Diamond because he turned off the radio. And so think about it. So there we are. I'm in silence. He's on the phone. And I resented it. And I didn't like it. And I got angry about it. But I didn't say anything. And these kids feel the same way about social media. Mom, Dad, you should be spending some time with me. But instead, you have your head buried in the phone trying to figure out what to post next. And so some advice that I'd like to give you tonight, some advice I'd like to share with you tonight, is first off, I think that in order to kind of break the addiction cycle on social media, if you want to try to break that addiction cycle, and I know how that is, it can be very painful. It's like throwing away that pack of cigarettes and saying you're never going to smoke again. At first, it's, I got this down, and then about an hour later, oh, crap. What have I done? Where's the closest gas station or convenience store around here? Seriously. The first thing you can do to start breaking some of those ties, to start cutting some of those ties more or less, is to stop updating your social media. Stop updating your social media so much. Instead of every day, maybe every other day. And you know what's cool about that is that it's mysterious. So look at it that way. People are going to find you more mysterious. I wonder what Ashley's doing today. She hasn't updated anything. That's not like her. I bet she's having a lot more fun than me. Think about it. So the less you update, the less that you stalk, the less you comment, the more mysterious and interesting you look. Keep that in mind, because that will help you get over the addiction hump. For all you men out there, for women, that works out because women like mystery. Men, you can do the same thing, especially if you are swinging single. Mystery's good. Because the women that are looking at you, they're stalking your page. Okay, so think about the mystery concept. Think about that. The second thing, the second big piece of advice is to begin to see the difference between reality and social media. This is crucial. This is crucial to your lasting happiness. To see the difference between reality and social media can be the difference between pain and happiness. When we don't realize that social media is not real, it is completely concocted, it is completely rehearsed, it has been spun 1,000,000 times. Think about that selfie that was taken 30 times. Think about it. And if you had any alcohol or were under the influence, it took you 60 times to find the perfect selfie that you then put some sort of coloration to it. Maybe you make it black and white. Maybe you kind of blow it out with a lot of light. Maybe you make it really, really dark. Try to make it look the best you can without any help. So to think about the reality of it, because you know what? Think about how everybody else is doing exactly what you're doing. Very few people have no makeup on for women and take a photo and put it on Facebook, their first shot. You men, If you're not flexing your muscles or doing something that's manly, rarely do you put that up on your page. Think about it. You don't sit there and see people on Facebook say, hey, I will go into the bathroom. Hope it all comes out okay. You don't hear people saying, well, burnt that pot roast again. Not very good in the kitchen. You don't hear people saying, oh, eating some more ramen noodles. Gotta save my money. Rent's due and I'm kind of short. You don't see people talking about their 12-year-old Nissan Altima. No. You don't hear people talking about their kid that's addicted to drugs. Think about it. You don't see any of the reality. It's all smokescreen and mirrors, even if they have what they have. I mean, how many people have you seen standing in front of a car to make it look like it's their car? Yeah, we figured that one out by now. But remember in the beginning of MySpace, we didn't know. You did not know that Lamborghini wasn't that guy's car. Think about it. You still get confused on social media. I have a friend of mine that posted pictures of private jets on their page and then wonders why people think that they have all this money. Well, I just don't know why. Could it be that you said you're flying home and you have a picture of a private jet and the interior of that jet? I mean, for somebody that's an acquired mind, somebody that actually is very deep in logistics and could have actually been a good part counterpoint to the FBI, the first thing that you would look at is to see, is there any sort of bags or luggage in said airplane? Is there anything of them? Did they not take a photograph on plane? No. There you go. Not their plane. However, think about it, how it's presented. Social media is one of those things that presents the picture as fact. You know what? Doesn't that mean more like we're judging a book by its cover? Aren't we only believing in what our eyes see, which is illusion? Isn't this actually the grand master plan for us to continue to be only surface dwellers? Think about it. Doesn't it feel like this is all a master plan so that we all get stuck in this surface dwelling society where we never go deep and we spend no time personal with other people? Instead, we spend time away from people because we become scared over time that if you're around people, they'll hurt you. And I want to do a show on that in the very near future about stranger danger. I think it's interesting how we as a society was raised to believe that strangers are dangerous. What a better way. There's no other better way of dividing and conquering by making people feel like the stranger could kill them or molest them or kidnap them or steal them. That's perfect. That's genius. Think about that. The next thing you can do to try to loosen up this addiction is to realize that spending time with your kids is golden. And even if they're punks sometimes. But think about it. When you look back at your life, you're not going to sit there and wish that you had had more time on Facebook. You're not going to sit there and wish that you had updated Instagram more each day. Instead, you're going to sit there and wish, God, I wish I had never gotten on that to begin with. Because the benefits didn't really outweigh anything. I really lost a lot of my life updating stuff that had no matter to it. Think about it. I mean, think about it. How many people are going to be listening to this show saying, oh, well, I wish I wouldn't have been paying as much attention to my kids when they were learning how to walk. I wish I would have been updating Facebook more. Some of these things are never going to happen again. The newness is going to wear out. The last thing you want to do is be out of the moment and instead updating Facebook and missing something, because there's nothing is set in stone. Nothing is here forever. You're not here forever. Your kids aren't here forever. With that in mind, it's a good idea to get the most out of it. And I understand that social media for some of us is work, some of us is business, some of us is to keep connected, some of us is to get the word out, and that's fine. And some of us is just purely social. But we gotta Take the time and sit there and figure out when is an appropriate time to do that and when is not. And when you're with your kids, maybe you have an hour of time by yourself where you just get on social media and you update and you take care of things. Maybe twice a day if you have to, in the early morning and before you go to bed. I'm not really adamant about before you go to bed because it normally keeps people up and it makes it very difficult for people to sleep. It really does. Makes it very difficult for people to sleep. Social media and the use of iPhones, cell phones, smartphones, pads, iPads, anything like that, because of the light and the intensity, it's hard to go to sleep. It can take hours to power down your mind on that. So really think clearly about when is the right time to be on social media, but also weigh the pros and cons. What's more important? Who's more important? In the end, is anybody going to sit there and put on your tombstone, always updated Facebook 3 times a day? No. Get your priorities straight. Start figuring out what's important. Start realizing and take a step each day to get closer to the right priorities. Because if you're living against your priorities, your kids will eventually do the same. Last but not least is be the example. Be the example of being in the now. Help your children understand what the present moment means. And also, as you help them to understand what the present moment means, it will also help you understand what the present moment means. Think about it. Be the example of what to do. And I'm not harping on my father here, but I am going to make a comment. It would have probably made a lasting impression on my child brain if he would have literally answered that phone and each time said, "Oh, it's really great to talk to you. I'm going to need to get back with you. Let me pull over real quick and get the information I need from you, and then I'm going to call you back when I get somewhere," and had gotten done in 2 to 3 minutes, and that would have probably made a really big impression on me. And I've had to work since then as a kid and now to really limit my time on the phone. But it came so easily for me to become addicted because I watched my dad do it. And think about how us kids think in black and white. Very extreme. Think about it. When mom or dad does something, the child has to either accept it and say that that's okay, that's right, that's the good thing to do. Therefore, later on down the road, they mimic it in every way, shape, and form, and usually is magnified. On the flip side, it's bad. The kid either says that it's good or what mom and dad is doing is bad, and they hate mom and dad for it. So be the example. Explain to your child and show them what being in the present moment is by being in the moment, showing them what it means to be in the moment, to be around, to see what's going on, to be able to sit there and realize all the awesomeness that you have going on in your family. And even if things aren't all that great right now, that's life. But you know what? They're going to learn a lot from mom and dad being straight up, being off the phone. And maybe that might need you to actually turn the phone off and leave it or put it in your purse for a woman. And as a man, maybe leaving it in the car. It's smart because you know what? You're going to learn a lot. You're going to also slow down on your phone addiction because that's just life. Once you're not doing it that much, you'll slow down on doing it. Seriously. It's like smoking cigarettes. When you're smoking a lot, you're smoking a lot. But when you slow down, and you can't go back to that many. And so you're going to look back at this and you're going to say, you know what? I got a lot more of my life back. My eyes don't hurt so bad. They're not burning as bad as they were all the time. And on top of that, man, my kids love me. And they care about me. And I care about them, and I'm lucky to have them. And you're going to also teach them about being in the moment, because when you're not on the sidelines and you're living your life and you're in the moment, kids learn from that. And they see what mom and dad do, and they go, oh, okay, mom and dad, even if you have to answer the phone because of whatever, get off quickly. On the Facebook, quick, to the point. But realize that they're watching you, and they're looking at you for the example. Think about your priorities. Think about if the tables were turned and you were their kid, what would you like? So I know social media can help us be connected and help us be interesting and have people like our stuff and all that good stuff. But realize that social media and reality are two different things. And show your kids that and explain to them so that they'll grow up with the right responsibilities and with the right things in order. You owe that to them. And they're looking up to you. By the way, I'm taking on new clients now for therapy and coaching sessions. Ashley Burgess. Go to ashleyburgess.com, BERGES, ashleyburgess.com. Go to the contact page and send me an email, and I will respond ASAP. I do coaching sessions online using Skype. I also am now doing a new series of phone coaching sessions, and I'm looking forward to working with you to help co-create your true life. Stay tuned. We got a great show for you next, and Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back this time in 3 shakes.